I still remember the first time Dongwu looked at me with those dark, fathomless eyes. It wasn't love I saw reflected there, though I was too naive to realize it then. It was recognition. Longing. A desperate hunger for someone who wasn't me. My name is Lee Borum, and for 2 years I lived as a ghost in the life of the man I loved. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dongwu's penthouse office, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. I balanced the tray of coffee carefully in my hands, my heart doing that stupid flutter it always did when I was about to see him. As an Omega, I'd learned to suppress my scent in professional settings, but around Dongwu my control always wavered. "Your coffee, Director Kong," I said softly, placing the cup on his desk. Dongwu looked up from his papers, and for a moment, his expression softened. His hand reached out, fingers brushing against mine as he took the cup. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm. "Borum," he murmured, his voice like warm honey. "You always know exactly how I like it." I felt my cheeks flush. "I've been your assistant for 2 years. I should know by now." His alpha pheromones washed over me, cedarwood and midnight rain, making my knees weak. He stood, circling the desk until he was close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. At 6'2", he towered over my more delicate 5'8" frame. "Just my assistant?" he asked, his hand cupping my jaw. His thumb traced my lower lip and I trembled. "I thought we were more than that now, My breath caught. We were more. For the past 6 months, our relationship had shifted from professional to something infinitely more complicated. Stolen kisses in empty conference rooms. His hands on my body in the privacy of his office after everyone had gone home. Nights when he'd pull me into his apartment, his mouth hot and demanding against mine. "Dongwu," I whispered, my hands clutching his shirt. "Someone might see." "Let them," he growled, pulling me flush against him. His lips crashed against mine in a kiss that stole my breath and my common sense. I melted into him, my body responding to his alpha presence with an intensity that frightened me. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. "So perfect. Just like." He stopped abruptly, his jaw tightening. "Like what?" I asked, my heart sinking. This wasn't the first time he'd compared me to someone unnamed, some phantom that haunted the spaces between his words. "Nothing," he said, stepping back. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by the cool professionalism he wore like armor. "I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Make sure the conference room is prepared." Just like that, I was dismissed. As I left his office, I tried to ignore the ache in my chest. This was how it always went. Moments of intense intimacy followed by sudden coldness, as if he remembered something that made him retreat into himself. 3 months passed in a blur of secret encounters and whispered promises. Dongwu would pull me into his arms late at night, his body covering mine with a possessiveness that made me believe I was his entire world. "Borum," he groaned against my neck, his hands mapping every inch of my skin. We were in his penthouse, tangled in silk sheets that smelled like him. "You feel so good. So perfect." I arched beneath him, my fingers digging into his shoulders as he thrust into me with controlled power. The pleasure was overwhelming, building like a crescendo until I shattered, crying out his name like a prayer. He followed moments later, his body shuddering as he emptied himself inside me. For a long moment we lay there, hearts pounding in sync, our bodies slick with sweat. "I want this forever," I whispered, my hand over his heart. "You and me." Dongwu's arms tightened around me. In the darkness I couldn't see his face, couldn't see the lie in his eyes. "Forever," he echoed, and I believed him. I believed him when he made love to me like I was precious. I believed him when he held me through the night, his body curled protectively around mine. I believed him when he whispered my name in the throes of passion. I was a fool. The next morning I woke to an empty bed. This wasn't unusual. Dongwu often rose early for work, but something felt different. Wrong. A sense of unease settled in my stomach as I dressed and made my way to the office. The day passed in a haze of meetings and phone calls. Dongwu was distant, distracted, his attention constantly drifting to his phone. Every notification made him tense, made that strange, almost hopeful expression cross his face. By Friday, I knew something had changed fundamentally. But I had my own secret now, one that both terrified and exhilarated me. I was pregnant. The test I'd taken that morning had shown 2 clear lines. An Omega pregnancy was rare and precious, but it could happen even with suppressants if the alpha's claim was strong enough. And Dongwu's claim on my body had always been absolute. I spent the entire day trying to find the courage to tell him. My hand kept drifting to my still flat stomach, where a tiny life was beginning to form, Our child, the physical manifestation of what I thought we had together. As evening fell and the office emptied, I made my way to Dongwoo's private floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. How would he react? Would he be happy? Scared? Would this finally make us real, make whatever we had solid and unbreakable? I approached his office door, my hand raised to knock, when I heard his voice from inside. He was on the phone and something in his tone made me freeze. No, you don't understand, Dongwoo said, his voice tight with emotion I'd never heard before. I found him. After all these years, I finally found Min-suk. The world tilted. Yes, I'm sure it's him, Dongwoo continued, and I could hear the smile in his voice, genuine, unguarded happiness that he'd never shown me. I can't believe he's back. I thought. After the accident, I thought I'd lost him forever. My hand dropped to my side. My breath came in short, painful gasps. Borum? His friend's voice was tinny through the speaker. What about your assistant? I thought you two were. Borum was just a substitute, Dongwoo said, each word a knife to my heart. He looked so much like Min-suk it was. God, I know it was wrong but I couldn't help myself. Every time I looked at him I saw Min-suk's face. That's the only reason But now that I have the real thing back, I don't need the replacement anymore. A sound escaped my throat, something between a sob and a gasp. The coffee cup I'd been holding for him slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The conversation inside stopped abruptly. I'll call you back, Dongwoo said quickly. Footsteps approached the door. I stood frozen as it swung open, revealing Dongwoo's face. For a moment, genuine panic flashed across his features before it smoothed into something carefully neutral. Borum, he said slowly. Did you hear anything? I should have run. I should have turned and fled before he could speak the words that would shatter what remained of my heart. But my feet felt rooted to the spot, my body betraying me one final time. Yes, I whispered, my voice breaking. I heard everything. Dongwoo's jaw tightened. He stepped back, allowing me to enter his office and closed the door behind us. The click of the lock sounded like a coffin ceiling. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, he said, but his tone was more irritated than apologetic. As if I was an inconvenience, a mess he needed to clean up. Am I really just a replacement? The words tore from my throat, raw and desperate. Tell me the truth, Dongwoo. Was any of it real? He had the decency to look away. You look exactly like him. Min-suk. My first love, my true mate. When he disappeared after the accident 5 years ago, I thought I'd never see him again. Then you walked into my office for that interview and He ran a hand through his hair. You have his eyes. His smile. The way you move. It was like he'd come back to me. But I'm not him, I said, my voice hollow. I'm me, Lee Borum. And I thought what we had was real. I cared for you, Dongwoo said, but even that felt like a lie. But Min-suk is back now. He's been in rehabilitation overseas, recovering from his injuries. He contacted me last week and... Stop. I held up a trembling hand. Just stop. I don't want to hear about him. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of him. Did you ever love me? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Even a little bit? Dongwoo's silence was answer enough. When he finally spoke, his words were clinical, detached. No. I'm sorry, Borum, but no. I love Min-suk. I've always loved Min-suk. You were just a substitute, I finished bitterly. Yes, you made that abundantly clear. I laughed, a broken sound that echoed in the vast office. My hand drifted to my stomach, to the secret growing there. A reckless impulse seized me, a need to wound him as he'd wounded me. What if I told you I was pregnant? I asked, meeting his eyes. Hypothetically, what would you do? The color drained from Dongwoo's face. For a moment, I saw genuine horror there, and the last tiny hope I'd been clinging to crumbled to dust. I would ask you to get an abortion, he said flatly. I can't have an unwanted child ruining my life, Borum. Not when I finally have a chance at happiness with Min-suk. The world went silent. All I could hear was the thundering of my own heart, the rush of blood in my ears. My hand pressed against my stomach, protecting the life growing there from the monster standing before me. An unwanted child, I repeated numbly. I'll give you a generous severance package, Dongwoo continued, as if we were discussing a business transaction. And a good reference. You can find another position easily. But I need you to clear out your desk by Monday. Min-suk will be taking over as my personal assistant, and it would be awkward if he were still here. Something inside me shattered completely. The Borum who had loved Dongwoo with everything he had ceased to exist in that moment. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that trust and love were luxuries he could no longer afford. Of course, I said, my voice eerily calm. I understand completely, Director Kong. The formality made him flinch, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just a vast, aching emptiness. Boredom. I'll have my things cleared out by tomorrow, I interrupted. You won't have to see me again. I turned and walked toward the door on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. My hand on the doorknob, I paused without looking back. I hope you're very happy with him, I said. I hope he's everything you remembered. Because the person you threw away tonight? He would have loved you forever. He would have given you everything. But you'll never know that now. I left Dongwoo's office, his building, his life. Each step felt like walking through water, like moving through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. When I finally reached my small apartment, I locked the door behind me and sank to the floor. Only then did I let myself break. The next morning, I packed my life into boxes with mechanical efficiency. 2 years of memories reduced to cardboard and tape. Photos of office parties where I'd smiled at the camera while Dongwoo stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. I threw them all away. Gifts he'd given me, cufflinks, a watch, a scarf in his favorite shade of blue, went into the trash. I kept nothing that would remind me of the fool I'd been. By Sunday, my apartment was empty except for the essentials I'd need for my new life. I'd found a small studio across the city in a neighborhood where no one knew Lee Borum, where I could disappear completely. My phone rang constantly, Dongwoo's number flashing on the screen. I never answered. What was left to say? He'd made his choice clear. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office before dawn. I left my resignation letter, my security badge, and my office keys on my cleared desk. No note, no explanation. I owed him nothing. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I placed my hand over my stomach. It's just you and me now, I whispered to the tiny life growing there. But that's okay. We don't need him. We'll be fine on our own. I almost believed it. The first months of pregnancy were brutal. Morning sickness left me weak and dizzy, but I couldn't afford to rest. I'd burned through most of my savings finding the new apartment, and without Dongwoo's generous salary, money was tight. I took on freelance work, translation services, data entry, anything I could do from home. My laptop became my lifeline, the glow of the screen my only companion during long, lonely nights. I avoided mirrors. The person looking back at me was a stranger, hollow-eyed, thin except for the growing swell of my belly. The delicate features that had once made Dongwoo look at me with desire now seemed like a curse. A face that would forever remind me of the lie I'd lived. By my 6th month, my pregnancy was impossible to hide. The bumps strained against my clothes, and I moved with the careful waddle of someone carrying precious cargo. I rarely left my apartment, but my supplies were running low and the baby needed things. Clothes, blankets, formula for after the birth. The supermarket was overwhelming after months of isolation. Bright lights, too many people, sounds that made my sensitive Omega hearing ache. I pushed my cart slowly, trying to ignore the stares people gave my obvious pregnancy and the lack of an alpha scent marking me as claimed. I'd made it halfway through my shopping list when the world tilted. One moment I was reaching for baby bottles, the next my vision was darkening at the edges, my legs giving out beneath me. I heard screams, felt myself falling. Strong arms caught me before I hit the ground. I woke to the smell of leather and expensive cologne. My cheek was pressed against something warm and solid. A chest, I realized groggily. A very firm, well-muscled chest. Easy, a deep voice rumbled above me. Don't try to move yet. You fainted. I blinked up at my savior and felt my breath catch. The man holding me was devastatingly handsome. Sharp jawline, aristocratic features, eyes like chips of obsidian. His suit probably cost more than my rent, and the watch on his wrist could have fed me for a year. An alpha. A powerful one, judging by the commanding presence that rolled off him in waves. I'm fine, I said, trying to pull away. His arms tightened, keeping me steady. You're clearly not fine, he said, his brow furrowing. When did you last eat? You're severely malnourished. That's none of your business, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I felt weak as a kitten, my body trembling from the effort of standing. I'm making it my business, he said firmly. He turned to someone behind him, a bodyguard, I realized, noting the other large man in a black suit. Bring the car around. We're taking him home. No, I protested weakly. I don't even know you. I can't. My name is Changmin, he said, those dark eyes boring into mine. And you're in no condition to be alone. Let me help you. I should have refused. Should have insisted I was fine, should have walked away from this stranger and his too kind eyes. But I was so tired. So alone. And the baby was kicking as if urging me to accept this unexpected lifeline. Okay, I whispered. Changmin's car was exactly what I expected. Sleek, black, worth more than most houses. The interior was all leather and chrome, and I felt absurdly out of place in my worn clothes and swollen belly. "Where do you live?" Changmin asked, settling beside me in the back seat. I gave him the address, watching his expression carefully. But if he judged my shabby neighborhood, he didn't show it. "You need to eat," he said, pulling out his phone. "I'm having my chef prepare something and bring it to your apartment. And before you argue, I'm not taking no for an answer." I didn't have the energy to argue. Instead, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me." Changmin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost vulnerable. "Because I know what it's like to be alone," he said. "And no one, especially not someone carrying a child, should have to face that darkness by themselves." Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. Beneath the expensive clothes and commanding presence, I saw shadows in his eyes that matched my own. "Where's the father?" Changmin asked quietly. "Of your baby." The question hit me like a physical blow. I turned away, staring out the window at the passing city. "Gone," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He didn't want us." I felt Changmin's hand cover mine, large, warm, steadying. "Then he's a fool." Changmin kept his word. Within an hour of dropping me at my apartment, food arrived. Not cheap takeout, but gourmet meals prepared by what was clearly a professional chef. Nutrient-rich soups, perfectly grilled salmon, fresh vegetables that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "This is too much," I told Changmin when he called to check on me. "I can't accept all this." "You can and you will," he said, a hint of steel in his voice. "I've seen malnourished omegas before, Borum. Do you know what happens to the baby when the mother isn't getting proper nutrition?" The use of my name startled me. I told him during the ride, in a moment of weakness, spilling more of my story than I'd intended. "How do you know so much about omega pregnancies?" I asked, deflecting. "My mother," Changmin said quietly. "She was an omega. She died giving birth to me because my father didn't take proper care of her during the pregnancy. I won't let that happen to someone else if I can prevent it." My throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just eat the damn food." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "You're very bossy for someone who just met me." "I'm the CEO of Chang Industries," he said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. "Bossy is part of the job description." My hand froze halfway to my mouth. Chang Industries, the largest corporation in Seoul. The man who'd caught me in the supermarket wasn't just any alpha. He was one of the most powerful men in the country. "You're that Changmin," I said faintly. "The S-tier alpha everyone talks about." "I prefer to think of myself as the devastatingly handsome stranger who saved you from face-planting in aisle 6, he said dryly. "But yes, that's me." "Why?" The question burst from me. "Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" Changmin was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with something I couldn't quite name. "Because when I looked at you in that supermarket, I saw someone who needed help. Someone who was trying so hard to be strong despite the world crushing down on them. And I thought, maybe I could be the help someone needed. Just once." "Thank you," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "You have no idea what this means to me." "Rest," Changmin said gently. "I'll check on you tomorrow." He did check on me. And the next day. And the day after that. Phone calls became visits. Visits became shared meals. Meals became long conversations that stretched late into the night. Changmin learned my story in pieces. About Dongwu, about the betrayal, about the baby growing inside me that represented both my biggest mistake and my greatest hope. I expected judgment, pity, disgust. Instead, Changmin listened with dark fury building in his eyes. "Tell me his name," he said one evening, his voice dangerously soft. We were sitting on my worn couch, sharing takeout, real takeout this time because I'd insisted he stop sending gourmet meals. "This alpha who hurt you. Tell me his name and I'll destroy him." "Changmin." "I'm serious." His hand cupped my jaw, forcing me to meet his intense gaze. "No one treats an omega this way. No one uses another person like a goddamn substitute and throws them away. He deserves to lose everything." "Revenge won't change what happened," I said softly, though part of me thrilled at the protective fury in his voice. "It won't take away the hurt." "No," Changmin agreed. "But it might make you feel better." I laughed despite myself. "You're ridiculous." "I'm resourceful," he corrected. "There's a difference." As weeks turned into months, I found myself depending on Changmin in ways that terrified me. He was there for every doctor's appointment, holding my hand through ultrasounds and checkups. He installed a state-of-the-art security system in my apartment, hired a cleaning service so I wouldn't have to strain myself, Made sure I had everything I could possibly need. Why are you doing all this? I asked him one night, my hand resting on my very round belly. The baby was due in 3 weeks and I was huge, uncomfortable, and emotional. You don't owe me anything. Changmin looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Because somewhere along the way you stopped being a stranger I helped in a supermarket. You became important to me, Borum. You and this baby. His hand covered mine on my stomach, and I felt the baby kick against our joined palms. She likes you, I whispered. She. Changmin's face lit up. You found out. At the last appointment. I wanted to know. I smiled through sudden tears. A daughter. I'm having a daughter. She's going to be beautiful, Changmin said softly. Just like her papa. The word papa sent a shock through my system. It sounded so right in his voice, so natural. Like this was how things were supposed to be. This alpha, this baby, this strange family we were building from broken pieces. My daughter entered the world screaming and I fell in love instantly. She's perfect, I sobbed, holding the tiny wrinkled bundle against my chest. She's absolutely perfect. Changmin stood beside my hospital bed, his eyes suspiciously bright. He'd been there through the entire labor, holding my hand, whispering encouragement, looking at me like I was the bravest person he'd ever seen. What will you name her? He asked softly. Haun, I said, stroking my daughter's downy hair. It means grace and kindness. Because she's teaching me that good things can come from pain. Haun, Changmin repeated, and then did something that made my breath catch. He leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Hello, little one. I'm going to love you and your papa for the rest of my life, if you'll both let me. I stared at him, my heart racing. Changmin. I know it's fast, he said, meeting my eyes. I know you're still healing from what that bastard did to you. But I need you to know, this isn't pity, Borum. This isn't some rescue fantasy. I'm falling in love with you. I have been for months, and I want to be part of your life. Part of Haun's life. If you'll have me. Tears streamed down my face. I'm broken, I whispered. He broke something in me, Changmin. I don't know if I can love someone the way I should. Then let me love you enough for both of us, Changmin said fiercely. Let me show you what real love looks like. What it means to be cherished, not used. To be wanted for who you are, not who you resemble. He took my free hand, his thumb stroking over my knuckles. I want to adopt Haun, he continued. I want to give her my name, my protection, everything I have. And I want to court you properly the way you deserve. No pressure, no expectations. Just, let me try. Please. I looked down at my daughter, then back at this incredible alpha who'd appeared in my life like a miracle. Who'd seen me at my lowest and chosen to stay. Who looked at my child, another man's child, with genuine love in his eyes. Okay, I whispered. Yes, let's try. The year after Haun's birth passed in a blur of joy I'd never thought I'd experience. Changmin courted me with a patience that astounded me. Flowers delivered weekly, dinners where we talked for hours, gentle touches that never demanded more than I was ready to give. He adopted Haun officially when she was 6 months old. I cried through the entire ceremony, watching this powerful alpha sign his name as her father with hands that shook with emotion. She's mine now, he said, cradling her tiny body against his chest. My daughter. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she's loved. Haun gurgled happily, her tiny fist wrapping around his finger, and I fell a little more in love with both of them. Changmin proposed on Haun's first birthday, in front of all our friends and his business associates. He got down on one knee in his $1,000 suit, holding a ring that probably cost more than my old apartment, and asked me to be his husband. I know you've been hurt, he said, his voice carrying across the garden where we'd gathered. I know trust doesn't come easy. But I swear to you, Borum, I will spend every day of our lives proving that you made the right choice. That we deserve your heart. Will you marry me? Through my tears I could only nod. The ring slid onto my finger, a perfect fit just like everything with Changmin, and he kissed me in front of everyone, claiming me as his in the way alphas had done for centuries. We married 3 months later in a ceremony that made national news. The reclusive CEO of Chang Industries marrying a former assistant, adopting his child. The press had a field day. But Changmin shut down every intrusive question with glacial politeness, making it clear that his family was off limits. They can speculate all they want, he told me on our wedding night as we lay tangled in silk sheets in our penthouse. But they'll never know the real story. That's ours alone. He made love to me that night with a reverence that made me weep. His hands mapped every inch of my body like I was something precious, something to be worshipped. When he finally entered me, it was with a gentleness that spoke of love, not just desire. Mine, he groaned against my neck, his body moving in a rhythm that built pleasure like a symphony. My Omega. My husband. Mine. Yours, I gasped, my body arching to meet his thrusts. Only yours, Changmin. When we came together it felt like healing. Like every broken piece of me was being carefully reassembled by his love. After, as we lay in the darkness, Changmin's arms around me, he said quietly, I have something to tell you. I tensed, old fears rising. What? Dongwu's company is failing, he said, and I felt him smile against my hair. He made some poor investment decisions. Trusted the wrong people. His merger with Hanxiang Industries fell through. He's hemorrhaging money. My heart started pounding. How do you know this? Because I made it happen, Changmin said simply. I told you I'd destroy him for hurting you. I always keep my promises. I should have been shocked. Should have protested this casual admission of corporate sabotage. Instead, I felt a dark satisfaction unfurl in my chest. He's trying to salvage things with a merger, Changmin continued. His only option is Chang Industries. He has a meeting with me next week. His hand found mine in the darkness. I thought you might like to be there. As my spouse. My business partner. My equal. He won't recognize me, I said slowly. I'm not the same person I was. No, Changmin agreed. You're stronger now. Colder. You've learned to protect yourself. That's not a bad thing, Borum. I want to see his face, I heard myself say. When he realizes who I am. What I became. I want him to know that he didn't break me. That I survived and thrived without him. Then you'll have your moment, Changmin promised. We'll destroy him together. 5 years after I'd walked out of Dongwu's life, I walked back in, but this time I held all the cards. The conference room of Chang Industries was a monument to power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul, expensive art adorned the walls, and the table could seat 20 people comfortably. Changmin sat at the head, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. I sat to his right, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Dongwu's car. I'd changed in 5 years. My body had regained the weight I'd lost, filled out into a healthier, stronger version of myself. My hair was styled differently, and I wore expensive glasses that changed the shape of my face. But more than physical changes, I developed an aura of cold confidence that came from being loved and valued. When Dongwu walked in, flanked by his lawyers and his assistant, not Min-suk, I noted with grim satisfaction. I kept my expression perfectly neutral. He looked terrible. The powerful, confident alpha I'd known was gone, replaced by someone who looked harried and desperate. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting, as if he'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Director Kong, Changmin said coolly, not rising. Please sit. Dongwu's eyes swept the room, passing over me without recognition. I felt a savage satisfaction at that. I was so far beneath his notice that he didn't even remember my face. Thank you for seeing me, Dongwu said, his voice tight. I know Chang Industries doesn't typically consider mergers with smaller companies, but I believe Kong Corporation has assets that could be mutually beneficial. Let's skip the pleasantries, Changmin interrupted. His hand found mine on the table, our fingers interlacing. You're here because your company is failing. You've burned bridges with every other major corporation in Seoul. I'm your last option. Dongwu's jaw tightened. That's an oversimplification. Is it? I spoke for the first time, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. From what I understand, Kong Corporation is hemorrhaging money. Poor investments, failed partnerships, key employees leaving. It's a sinking ship, Director Kong. Dongwu's eyes finally focused on me, really looked at me. I saw the moment confusion flickered across his face, some vague sense of familiarity he couldn't quite place. And you are? He asked. This is my husband, Changmin said, his voice like silk over steel. Lee Borum. Though he goes by Chang Borum now. Perhaps you remember him? He used to be your assistant. The color drained from Dongwu's face. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his eyes wide with shock. Borum, he whispered. But you look so different. 5 years will do that to a person, I said pleasantly. Especially when they're no longer starving themselves to maintain a ghost's appearance. I didn't know, Dongwu stammered. I tried to find you after you left. I wanted to apologize to make things right. You wanted to apologize? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to something dangerous. How noble. Tell me, did you apologize before or after you realized Min-suk wasn't the person you remembered? Before or after he left you for someone else? The direct hit made Dongwu flinch. How did you? I know everything about you, I said. Where you go, who you see, every business dealing you've made in the past 5 years. Do you really think I'd forget what you did to me? What you called my child. Your child? Dongwoo's eyes went wide. You were actually pregnant? I thought you were just saying that to what? Make you feel guilty? I laughed, a cold sound. Let me tell you about my daughter, Director Kong. Her name is Haun. She's 5 years old now. She's brilliant, beautiful, and loved beyond measure. And she calls Changmin Appa, because he's been her father in every way that matters. Because he chose us when you threw us away. Tears were streaming down Dongwoo's face now. Boram, I'm so sorry. I was a fool. I should have. Loved me? I finished. Yes, you should have. But you didn't. You used me, replaced me, and discarded me without a second thought. And you know what? I'm grateful. Grateful? Dongwoo looked lost. Because if you hadn't thrown me away, I never would have found real love. I looked at Changmin, letting him see the genuine emotion in my eyes. I never would have learned what it feels like to be someone's first choice. Their only choice. Changmin raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles without breaking eye contact with Dongwoo. So here's what's going to happen, Changmin said, his voice back to business. Chang Industries will not be merging with Kong Corporation. In fact, I'm going to make sure no one in Seoul touches your failing company. You'll lose everything, your business, your reputation, your future. Just like you tried to take everything from my husband. Please, Dongwoo begged, all pride abandoned. I know I don't deserve your mercy, but I'm begging you. Don't do this. The way my husband begged you to love him? Changmin's eyes were cold as winter. The way he might have begged for your support when he was pregnant and alone? You had your chance to be a decent person, Director Kong. You failed spectacularly. The meeting ended with Dongwoo being escorted out by security, still pleading. I watched him go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just a calm certainty that this chapter was finally, truly closed. Are you okay? Changmin asked quietly once we were alone. Yes, I said and realized I meant it. I think I finally am. That evening, Changmin and I returned to our penthouse where Haun was waiting with her nanny. The moment we walked through the door, she launched herself at us with a squeal. Appa, Papa, you're home. Changmin caught her easily, swinging her up into his arms. Hello, my beautiful girl. Were you good today? So good. Haun declared. I drawed you a picture. Want to see? Drew, I corrected gently, pressing a kiss to her forehead. And yes, we'd love to see it. As Haun dragged us to the living room to show off her crayon masterpiece, a family portrait with the three of us holding hands, I felt Changmin's arm wrap around my waist. I love you, he murmured against my ear. In case I haven't said it enough today. You say it every day, I reminded him. Multiple times. And I'll say it every day for the rest of our lives, he promised. Later, after Haun was tucked into bed with her favorite story read twice, Changmin and I retired to our bedroom. He pulled me into his arms and I went willingly, my body melting against his. Today was intense, he said, his hands stroking through my hair. How are you really feeling? Lighter, I admitted. Like I finally let go of something I'd been carrying for too long. I pulled back to look at him. Thank you. For everything. For saving me, for loving me, for being Haun's father. Boram, Changmin said seriously. You saved yourself. I just had the privilege of being there to witness it. He kissed me then, slow and deep, pouring 5 years of devotion into the press of his lips. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. Make love to me, I whispered. Make me forget there was ever anyone before you. Changmin's eyes darkened with desire and love in equal measure. He guided me to our bed, undressing me with reverent hands. You're so beautiful, he murmured, his lips tracing the curve of my throat. My perfect omega. My everything. His hands mapped familiar territory, finding every spot that made me gasp and arch. When he finally entered me, it was with a slowness that was almost torture, filling me completely. Changmin, I moaned, my hands clutching his shoulders. Please. Tell me you love me, he demanded, his hips rolling in a rhythm that made stars burst behind my eyelids. Tell me you're mine. I love you, I gasped. Only you. Always you. I'm yours, Changmin. Completely yours. He groaned, his pace increasing, driving into me with a passion that made my entire body sing. When my release hit, it was explosive, pleasure radiating through every nerve. Changmin followed moments later, my name on his lips like a prayer. After, as we lay tangled together, our hearts gradually slowing, I traced patterns on his chest. Do you ever regret it? I asked quietly. Taking on someone else's child? Someone as broken as I was. Changmin captured my hand, bringing it to his lips. Haun is my daughter. And you were never broken, Boram. You were surviving the best way you knew how. There's nothing to regret about loving you both. I never thought I could be this happy, I confessed. After what happened with Dongwoo, I thought I'd never trust anyone again. Never love again. And now? Changmin asked. Now I can't imagine my life without you, I said simply. You and Hone. You're my everything. Good, Changmin said, pulling me closer. Because you're stuck with us. Forever. Forever, I agreed and finally believed it. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Chang Industries, watching the Seoul skyline glitter in the evening light. Behind me, I could hear Haon chattering excitedly to her father about her day at school. At 10 years old, my daughter was brilliant, confident, and completely unaware of the circumstances of her birth. She knew Changmin wasn't her biological father, but it had never mattered. He was her Appa in every way that counted. Papa. Haon called. Appa says we're going to the park tomorrow. Will you come? I turned, finding them both watching me, Changmin with his quiet, steady love, Haon with her bright, innocent joy. My family. My everything. Of course, I said, opening my arms. Haon ran into them and Changmin wrapped his arms around us both. I love you, I whispered, meaning it for both of them. We love you too, Haon said immediately. Right, Appa? More than anything in this world, Changmin confirmed, pressing a kiss to my temple. I'd started as a ghost in someone else's story. A replacement, a placeholder, a substitute for something real. But I'd become so much more. A survivor, a father, a husband, a partner. I'd found real love in the ruins of something that was never meant to last. And standing there, surrounded by the family we'd built from broken pieces, I finally understood something fundamental. I was never the ghost. I was always real. I just needed to find someone who could see it. The penthouse was quiet except for the soft hum of the city below. Haon had finally fallen asleep after her third request for just one more story, and the nanny had retired to her quarters for the evening. Changmin and I were finally alone. I stood in our bedroom, loosening my tie as I watched the city lights dance across the walls. Even after all these years, sometimes I still couldn't believe this was my life. This beautiful home, this amazing daughter, this incredible man who loved me unconditionally. Strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind, and I felt Changmin's lips press against the sensitive spot below my ear. You're thinking too much again, he murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. I can practically hear the gears turning in that beautiful head of yours. I leaned back into his embrace, letting his alpha pheromones wash over me, that intoxicating blend of cedarwood and rain that always made me feel safe, protected, cherished. Just thinking about how lucky I am, I said softly, turning in his arms to face him. How different my life could have been if you hadn't caught me that day. Changmin's expression softened, his hand coming up to cup my jaw. His thumb traced my lower lip with a tenderness that still made my heart flutter after all this time. I'm the lucky one, he said. Do you know what I see when I look at you, Borum? I shook my head, suddenly unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat. I see strength, he continued, his dark eyes burning with intensity. I see someone who survived hell and came out stronger. I see the most devoted father, the most brilliant partner, the most beautiful Omega I've ever known. And I see my entire world. Changmin, I whispered, my hands fisting in his shirt. Kiss me. Please. He didn't need to be asked twice. His lips claimed mine in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened into something hungry, desperate. His tongue traced the seam of my lips, and I opened for him immediately, letting him take control the way my Omega instincts craved. His hand slid down my back to grip my hips, pulling me flush against him. I could feel his arousal pressing against my stomach, and it sent a bolt of heat straight to my core. Even after years together, he still wanted me with an intensity that took my breath away. I need you, he growled against my lips, his voice dropping into that alpha command that made my knees weak. Let me make love to my husband. Let me show you how much you mean to me. Yes, I breathed, already feeling slick beginning to gather between my thighs, my body's natural response to my alpha's desire. Please, Changmin. I need you too. He guided me backward toward our massive bed, his hands making quick work of my tie and shirt buttons. Each inch of skin he revealed was worshipped with his lips, kissing, sucking, leaving marks that would fade by morning but made me feel claimed in the best way. So perfect, he murmured against my collarbone, his teeth grazing the sensitive skin. My beautiful Borum. All mine. Yours, I agreed, my fingers threading through his hair as he worked his way down my chest. Only yours, Changmin. Always. He pushed me gently onto the bed and I went willingly, watching through half-lidded eyes as he stripped off his own clothes. Even after all this time, the sight of him never failed to make my mouth go dry. All that sculpted muscle, the confident way he moved, the way his eyes never left mine, as if I was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. When he was finally naked, he crawled over me like a predator stalking prey. But I'd never felt safer, never felt more wanted. His weight settled between my thighs, and I spread them wider to accommodate his larger frame. "I love you," he said, his hand sliding down my stomach to the waistband of my slacks. "Let me hear you say it, Borum. Tell me you love me." "I love you," I gasped as his hand slipped beneath the fabric, his fingers finding my hardness and stroking with practiced ease. "I love you so much, Changmin. More than I ever thought possible." He made short work of my remaining clothes, leaving me bare beneath him. His eyes raked over my body with such open appreciation that I felt beautiful despite the slight softness that remained from pregnancy, despite the stretch marks that silver-lined my stomach. "Perfect," he said again as if reading my thoughts. His hand splayed across my stomach over those marks. "Every part of you is perfect, Borum. Evidence of the life you carried, the strength you have. I love every inch of you." Tears pricked at my eyes. Even now, he knew exactly what to say to chase away those old insecurities. His fingers trailed lower, finding the slick that had gathered between my thighs. He groaned at the wetness, his eyes darkening further. "Already so ready for me," he murmured, circling my entrance with teasing pressure. My responsive Omega. "Do you know how much I love that your body calls for mine this way?" "Changmin, please," I whimpered, my hips trying to press down onto his fingers. "Stop teasing. I need you inside me." "Patience, my love," he said, but there was strain in his voice too. His control was slipping, his alpha instincts demanding he claim his Omega. "I want to make this good for you. Want to make you fall apart." He slipped one finger inside me and I cried out at the intrusion. So good but not nearly enough. My body was built for this, designed to take an alpha's knot, and right now it was demanding exactly that. "More?" I begged, my hands clutching at his shoulders. "Please, more." He added a second finger, then a third, stretching me carefully despite the slick making it easy. His thumb found that bundle of nerves that made stars burst behind my eyes, and I was suddenly teetering on the edge of release. "Not yet," he commanded, pulling his fingers away. I whined at the loss, but then he was positioning himself at my entrance and all thoughts fled. "Look at me," he ordered, and my eyes snapped to his. "I want to see your eyes when I claim you. Want to watch you come undone." He pushed inside in one smooth thrust and I cried out at the stretch, the fullness, the absolute perfection of being joined with my alpha. No matter how many times we did this, it always felt like coming home. "Borum," he groaned, his forehead dropping to rest against mine. "You feel incredible. So tight, so perfect. Made for me." "Move," I pleaded, my legs wrapping around his waist. "Please, Changmin, I need." He didn't let me finish. He pulled out almost completely before slamming back in, setting a rhythm that was both punishing and perfect. Each thrust hit that spot inside me that made my vision white out, made me forget everything except the feeling of him inside me, the scent of us together, the sound of our bodies joining. "That's it," he encouraged as I started making broken sounds of pleasure. "Let me hear you, love. Let me know how good I make you feel." "So good," I gasped, my nails digging into his back. "Changmin, you feel so good. I'm close, I'm so close." "Come for me," he commanded, his hand wrapping around my neglected length and stroking in time with his thrusts. "Come for your alpha, Borum. Show me how much you love this." The combination of sensations, his thick length inside me, his hand on me, his alpha pheromones surrounding me, pushed me over the edge. I came with a cry of his name, my body clenching around him as wave after wave of pleasure crashed through me. "Perfect," Changmin groaned, his rhythm becoming erratic. "My perfect Omega. Mine, mine, mine." He thrust deep one final time, his knot swelling to lock us together as he released inside me. The feeling of being filled, claimed, connected so completely sent aftershocks of pleasure through my oversensitive body. We stayed locked together, both breathing hard, our bodies slick with sweat. Changmin carefully turned us on our sides so his weight wouldn't crush me, his arms pulling me close against his chest. "I love you," he murmured, pressing kisses to my face, my neck, anywhere he could reach. "Thank you for being mine. For trusting me with your heart." "Thank you for seeing me," I replied, my hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady beneath my palm. "For loving me when I couldn't love myself. For giving me Haun, this life, everything." We lay there in comfortable silence as his knot gradually subsided. Even when we could separate, neither of us moved. I was content to stay in his arms, feeling safe and loved and whole. "Borum," Changmin said after a while, his tone suddenly serious. "I want another child. I pulled back to look at him, surprised. Another? Yes. His hand slid down to rest on my stomach. I want to give you a child that's ours from the beginning. One you don't have to carry in fear and loneliness, but in joy, knowing you're supported and loved. I want to experience every moment with you, the cravings, the ultrasounds, the midnight kicks. Everything I missed the first time. Tears filled my eyes. You really want that? More than anything, he said softly. But only if you do. Only if you're ready. I thought about it, about carrying Changmin's child, about giving Haon a sibling, about creating new life out of the love we'd built. And suddenly I wanted it desperately. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I want that too. Changmin's face broke into the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. He kissed me deeply, passionately, pouring all his joy and love into the connection. Thank you, he murmured against my lips. Thank you for giving me everything I never knew I needed. As we drifted off to sleep, still tangled in each other's arms, I realized something profound. I'd spent 2 years living as a ghost in someone else's story, but I'd spent 10 years being completely, utterly alive in my own. And this love, this family, this life, was more real than anything I'd ever known. I was home. Finally, truly home.